You're still watching Market Watch. Coming up, Nigeria, one of the top leading economies in Africa emerging markets, besides South Africa and Angola, is leading the continent in a quest for a competitive market environment that is attractive for investors. Let's take you outside the studio straight to Broad Street, the heart of Lagos, and the Central Business District, where I met with Okpara Eze, the CEO of Prince Securities Limited. He joins me in this exclusive analysis of the African market and investment opportunities. Thank you for finding time to join me on the show at the moment. First, let me start. Nigeria is an emerging economy. How would you assess the level of development and, of course, investment when you talk about economy in general?
Yes, Nigeria has not done badly as well in terms of the level of investment and the statistics of other things vis-a-vis infrastructure, particularly in the capital market.
All right.
You know, emerging markets, they have a tenet. And because they are emerging, you know, we attack the emerging because there's a first world and there's a third world. So any market that is in the third world is an emerging, any economy that is in the third world is an emerging economy. Nigeria inclusive. Africa, Asia particularly, they regard us as emerging markets. And then the economies are attractive. Okay. Why? Because they are basically virgin economies. And the developed world, you know, there are certain things they look out for in the emerging markets and emerging economies. And once they see it, they move in. After the market crash of 2008, and then the world global meltdown, the developed economies saw the emerging markets as an area where they will make a lot of money.
That's
a lot
right.
of return on
their investment.
So they zeroed in on certain economies. And you know, Nigeria at a point before the crash and before the meltdown was amongst the three, Nigeria, Mexico.
You talk about the bloc?
Yes, the bloc.
Okay, all right.
So they saw us as an attractive economy.
All right.
And if you notice, immediately following the crash,
all right,
our markets was very volatile. The volatility level was very high. Why? Because the emerging economies zeroed on our market. And then they were more like controlling it. So anytime you see foreign investors come into the country, the market goes up.
That's right. You know, the South Africa, you mentioned it's part of the emerging economies as well as Nigeria. So you look at it holistically. That's the African market picture put together. So what incentive do you think Africa needs to adopt that will fuel economic growth and also build a very matured capital market?
Well, I think Africa has to invest more on institutions. All right.
Well, when you say institution, how do you mean? Because sometimes we have, the investment. Are you talking about the institutional investors?
No.
Okay, all right.
I mean institution. You know, in emerging economies and emerging markets, the basic thing where they normally zero on are individuals.
Oh, okay, all right. That's right.
High net worth individuals.
That's right.
And then institutional investors too. But in this case, Africa has to invest more on their institutions, not on individuals.
You're talking about fundamentally now.
Yes, fundamentally. Right. So if we do that, and then you know the advanced economies, they look out for those things. Once those things are there, then you see them come out and bulk. Because they are looking for areas where there will be high return on their investment. And once there's high return on their investment, they can go to any level to invest in those economies. Now, the institutions I mean are in security, for instance. Because where you put your wealth or your treasure, that is where your heart is.
That's right.
So, and these institutions that come from the developed economies, they look out for security. Security of their capital is basic for them. Once there's no guarantee for their security, for the security of their capital, you don't see
that means the level of risk needs to be minimized.
Yes, it needs to be minimized. So if we do that, and then, like in energy, for instance, Africa has also to invest a lot in energy. Because this, like in our own economy, talking about back home now, there's incessant power supply, outages. So if there's steady power supply, and then the basic investments in institutions are there, then you see a lot of these investors come, they will come. There are so many of them, they have the capital, they have the fund, but they are looking for where they will invest it. And they see the emerging markets as a target.
You talk about the level of risk, minimizing the level of risk and providing security on the investment, safety of capital of these investors. So that's where I'm going, because Africa is considered to be a more risky investment continent. So part of it is that the corruption level is high, and the level of crime is also high. How do you think we can correct this perception about African market?
Yeah, well, it's very difficult to dissociate politics from economics.
All right.
There's economics of business, and there's politics of business. So the governments, African governments, have to invest a lot in we have talked about security now.
That's right.
They have to fight crime also. Then they have to also fight corruption. Because the developed economies, this issue of corruption in Africa is also discouraging them. Government policy also is a key factor. Government policy is a key factor. And when they stay on the fringes and they are watching, because they see the emerging markets as a veritable area of investment, where the return on their investment will be very high. They see that, but then the security level of their capital is their basic worry.
You are an operator in the market. Are there indicators really that you have seen, numbers? Because I understand that investors play with numbers a lot. Are there encouraging indicators or numbers you've seen that you may want to share with us?
In terms of foreign investments?
Yes, in terms of attractive, attracting in foreign investment and portfolios.
Well, at the moment, it is epileptic.
Okay.
It is not as strong as is expected. Why? Because there are a lot of things that are not yet in place that will make them to come. So many things. The ease of doing business again. It's not all about investing and then taking away your investment to another area. Because what they actually do, the foreign investors, what they do is they move from one emerging market to another emerging market. They move from, if you zero in on the capital market, for instance, there are times when you see the market going down consistently. When you notice such, then you know that the foreign investors are on their way out. They are offloading whatever
they came with.
Yes. So, and they are on their way out, heading to another emerging market. They are definitely not going back to their own market, because the return on investment in their own market is not as high as it is in emerging markets. And if I may use this word, the foreign investors are greedy. They want high return on their investment. And
so they look for any opportunities in any developing economies to reinvest.
To reinvest. And that's what they do. They move from one country to another country, from one emerging market to another emerging market. Sometimes they move up north, to Cairo, to Tunis, even as far as Addis Ababa. So they move, and they don't give sometimes they are adamant about what is happening in the country. All they are after is the return on their investment. But the basic ones are always after security of capital. They want stability in government too. They want a country where their leadership is stable, so that their investment will be stable too. You understand? So those are the things they are looking out for. Government policy is of key importance to them. They watch out for these things. And they invest money in these things too, because the return is an offshoot of whatever they have.
Okay, let's take a look at, of course, you've highlighted how these have the government needs to create security and environment and all of that. But let's look at potentials in the Nigerian capital market, especially. In the next 5 years, what are your outlook like? What can you tell us in terms of the level of growth that the market or the economy can witness in the next 5 years? Talking about the potentials in the economy.
Well, a lot of potentials are in the economy, particularly in the market. You know, astute investors look out for markets that are bearish, because that offers the opportunity for you to move in. You get your investments at a low level, and then within a short while, if there's any appreciation, you offload. So, and the Nigerian capital market is just convenient.
The right,
This is the right
markets.
time for people to come and invest in the Nigerian capital market, because in the next 5 years, the story will be different.
That's right. That's
And
right.
our market is so convenient that if you invest wisely, you will never lose money. So I see a market, if you look at the trajectory, a market that in the next 5 years is going to blow, a market that is going to be so attractive that most people who do not invest now will be at the losers end, at the losing end. Yeah. So I see a market from the tenets, from what is happening at the moment, because if you look at the results that are coming in
That's
now,
right.
if we zero in on this operating year.
Okay, you're talking about the earnings now
Yeah, the
of
earnings.
these quoted listed
That's right,
companies. Okay.
listed companies. If you look at their earnings, you will see that those of them from the last quarter that did not do very well, because there was a lot of improvement.
There's improvement
Yes,
in their
there's a lot of
results.
improvement
Okay.
in their results, and that shows a market that is, if I may borrow their word, that is growing.
Okay.
A market that is
That's
emerging.
interesting. Oh, okay. Talking about you talked earlier about the political leadership. Earlier. So
The
looking
politics of the politics of governance.
of
and
governance
economics.
in business. Yes. So if you look at that within the next 1 year, of course, then less than 6 months now, of course, we should produce another president.
Right.
But what's your outlook for the rest of the year? Between now and then, do you see a personality playing a very huge determining factor in what may play out in the economy in the next 6 months to come?
Yes, you see the
Because as it is, it will seem that the economy is in their need of a personality that will provoke a kind of growth in that sector.
without being political, the Nigerian economy is in a comatose level as we speak now. If we look at the real sector, apart from the capital market, you will see that economically things are just at a standstill. And this is an election year. And the average Nigerian has become so economically aware that they can associate that with politics. And the average Nigerian believes that a good leader with economic sense will lift this country out of the present economic doldrum that we are in. Let us look at employment, for instance. The employment level is so low. There are so many youths, so many graduates that have come out of the university, no job. They have the requisite training, but yet nothing to do. The reason being that government has concentrated so much on politics, they have left economics behind. So, and because of that, a lot of things are suffering. So, people are looking up to the elections very seriously. I'm not a politician, and I want you to believe me. They are looking up to the elections. And the beauty of that is that the current government is also working on their system economically. You see the vice president moving from one part of the country to the other part of the country. And if you look at the indices, recently the Bureau for Statistics released a report on the ease of doing business.
National Bureau of Statistics,
Yes,
so
NBS.
NBS.
Nigeria came up a little bit, and that is showing that the current government is becoming sensitive.
I thought the number really brought Nigerian low to from where it used to be. I didn't know that Nigeria came up.
No, Nigeria came up
Okay.
statistically. And you know that of late, in the last couple of weeks, the vice president have been moving from one state to the other, empowering
The small and medium
the
enterprise
small
and the
and
real
medium
sector operators.
sector. And they are also involving development banks, you know, NIDB and so on in the process. There are even some loans that they are giving out at the moment that are interest-free.
And that could be a major, catalyst
That's right.
in the real sector.
In the real sector. So if they continue like this, it means that their popularity index will improve. Otherwise, there will be a problem for the current government in the next election.
Let me hold your thought there. We'll take a moment. When we come back, we'll talk more. We'll be taking a look at the African emerging markets, opportunities in this market. That's what we've been talking about. We'll take a moment now. We'll be back. Join us again. Glad to have you back now. Let's continue the conversation. My guest has been Okpara Eze, the CEO of Crane Securities Limited. Let's continue the conversation here now. Technological infrastructure limit is a very huge challenge. When I say infrastructure limit, of course, the major infrastructures like power and all of that, and of course, in terms of technology as well, how do you suppose we break this limit on the African market?
Well, Nigeria has already started. If you look at the technology level at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, you will see that it is not what it was 10 years down the line. When we look at 1999 to date,
All right.
technology actually started in the markets in 1999 with the introduction of the Central Securities Clearing System.
All right.
Prior to that, we were doing more like manual trading. And manual activities. So, but with the introduction of the CSCS, technology took over. Computers came in and other IT infrastructure. And ever since then, the market has been growing in leaps and bounds. Foreign investors have been interested in the market because prior to now, they could not access our market. And then, before 1999, Nigeria was a pariah state. And so they were more or less not here. Those who are here are those risk takers and those who could risk the military then. But from 99, things began to improve. Technology, Nigerian market, the Nigerian Stock Exchange invested a lot on technology.
All right.
And today, you can see the products. Even as we speak now, we trade from the office here. And as we trade, somebody who is in Canada can also access the Nigerian market. Somebody who is in Cairo can access the Nigerian market. Somebody who is in Nairobi can access the Nigerian market. Somebody who is in Enugu can access it. So you can see that technology has really taken over. But we're not yet there because we cannot compete with the advanced markets of this world.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
So, but we have to also encourage ourselves in the little we have been able to do so that we can do more.
Because I asked that question because one of the issues that have been popping up over time is the issue of culture, the local culture here in terms of how we trade, in terms of our people. So the integration is another thing. Would you want to talk about that?
Yes, that is where government has to come in. But government has no business in the market. It is purely an institutional affair. So, but then some government policies can encourage what you just pushed on now, like the culture and the mindset of the people, of the locals. Because you have to talk about the locals before you go extrapolate.
Because the local, well, I say the ordinary, the low income earners, sometimes look at the capital market or investment in the capital market just for the elite. And so when you bring in technology, it's another big, different challenge for them.
That is true. That is true. But you see, the managers of the markets have a lot of work to do in that direction. Because they need to do a lot of enlightenment programs. They have to move from one region of the country to the other, enlightening people about the market. Because it's a veritable area of investment for them. It's an alternative investment haven. In fact, the returns from the capital market is about 200% compared to the returns from the money market, and also from the regular secular market, like the markets of Oyibo and stuff. The importers also, most of them, sometimes in 2007, they were encouraged to come to the market when they looked at the return level. Why? Because the market, all you need to do is to study the variables in the market, and then you move in and you begin to make money. So enlightenment, government has to invest on enlightenment programs so that people know that the market is a very veritable area for investment, and that is not an elitist area per se, though it's capitalist. The market is a capitalist system. You know, it's money that speaks there. You must be well capitalized for you to make money in the market. You know, but then the small investors still remain what we call the core investors, because they are the ones that make the base for the market.
That's right.
Yes, they are the retail investors. Because
That's
without
right.
retail investors, the market itself, it becomes elitist, like you have said. The retail investors have to be encouraged. You don't drive them away. And then how do you encourage them? You encourage them through enlightenment programs. You tell them, these are the gains. These are the things you gain when you come to the market. And they will be encouraged. You know.
Okay, let's move away from Nigeria and look at Africa holistically. How do you suppose Africa create a proper market, and that is risk-free, so as to rise in terms of expanding the market? Because sometimes it will seem that within one border to another, there seems to be some challenges when you talk about exchange of services, trade within the African borders, as it were. How would you address this
Yes,
situation?
every country has its own diplomatic barriers. And ECOWAS has tried a lot to address that issue. I don't know about the northern and the central African regions, but I know that in ECOWAS there's free travel permits now. Sometimes you don't need visa to go to Ghana from Nigeria, but you just need that ECOWAS travel permit. You need the travel permit to be able to go to Ghana, or to go to Benin Republic, or to go to Togo, or to go to even as far as Chad.
That's right.
So Africa has to try as much as possible to break those barriers, so that there will be exchange of economic benefits between countries. Especially when we look at the capital market, for instance. I'm sure you know about the ASEA that will soon hold in Lagos.
That's right.
In the next couple of days. That will be an opportunity to address some of those issues, so that most countries will collapse some of these conditionalities, so there will be interchange of economic ideas and then economic benefits between African countries, and particularly in the capital market. I know that sometime in 1998 we had to go to I think it's Cotonou, Benin Republic, to assist in the opening of their own capital market. They requested for, and we give them that service. So such things should be encouraged in Africa, so that there will be free flow of economic ideas and economic benefits.
One thing that we've been talking about over time is also the issue of free trade treaty agreement as well. Of course, Nigeria declined that they were not going to sign. But let's talk about, focus on that a little bit. In terms of benefit, because I wouldn't know why Nigeria wouldn't want to sign at the moment, but because perhaps as a player, you could explain to us maybe if that again was something Nigeria was going to benefit or something he wasn't going to benefit from.
Well, Nigeria acts as a big brother in Africa. And for Nigeria to decline, you must know that there's a major reason why they decline. If you look at so many of the economic and political blocks in Africa, not to talk about the sub-region, you notice that most of their headquarters are in Nigeria. And Nigeria more like bears the burden for the rest of the African countries. So that decline, there must be a diplomatic reason for declining. Otherwise, you notice that it's Nigeria that champions most of these policies. And
that's right.
Even the ECOWAS parliament, there are sitting places in Nigeria. And so many other regional economic blocks. So for Nigeria to decline that assent, there must be a major diplomatic reason for that. And I'm sure when one or two things are put in place, Nigeria will sign. Because the rest of Africa, let's look at it, the rest of Africa looks up to Nigeria for most of these things. So, and we cannot disappoint them at the end of the day.
Just before we, wrap up the talk show, this segment of the show, of course, Africa is rising. That's one of the, and Nigeria is leading that, campaign in terms of growing economies and all of that. So what are the things do you think that we can initiate in this part of the world, or the continent, to really deepen our market, encourage investment, attract other investors from outside in this market?
Well, government policy. Government policy is number one. When government issues policies, the policies sometimes discourages business. The policies sometimes encourages business. And most businessmen outside of this country, both in the African continent and in the developed world, they are watching your policies. And once that policy is favorable, you see a lot of them coming into your country to invest. At the moment, there's a lot of initiatives on the part of government that has encouraged investment. A lot. That's why earlier on when we talked about the ease of doing business, registration of companies and so on and so forth, government has really come down on those policies. And these things will help deepen economic interest in a country. Then when we come to the capital market, for instance, government policies can also influence activities in the market. And then to also deepen the market, a lot of these companies, so many of them have to be encouraged to come and get listed in the market, so that the shares available will be attractive for both foreign investors and African investors. Because when they come, the limits of shares that are listed is also indirectly related to the interest on those companies by investors.
That's right.
For instance, if you see a large institutional investor coming from outside of Africa, that's from the developed market, and they want to invest in a particular company, the units of the shares available for investment is also of great significance. So that's why we clamor for more companies to get listed in the market. And the more they get listed, the more the market deepens. And then the more the interest is generated.
Okay, let's hear your party shots on the show.
Well, the main crux of the discussion was emerging markets, interest in emerging markets, and how local investors can be encouraged to come to the market, and then how the current apathy can be discouraged. When I talk about apathy, I talk in terms of the local investors getting more and more confused when the IT infrastructure sector of the market comes to play, and then they begin to think that it is an elitist market, and that this market is not for them. But the market is also, there are segments of the market. We have the first tier and the second tier. The second tier can encourage the local investors if they feel they don't have enough financial muscle to come into the market. They can invest in the second tier. There are stocks that...
When you say second tier, that's the secondary market, you mean? All right.
The secondary market is the whole market as a whole.
All right.
The primary market is the IPOs, the public offers.
Okay.
Yes, that is the primary market. But the secondary market is the stock market as it is, because at the end of the primary market, the stocks are transferred to the secondary
market.
So the second tier, there's first tier. In the first tier, you have companies like Nigerian Breweries, Total,
like Nestle, or Guinness, and all that.
They're all in the first tier. The second tier, because the conditions for listing of these companies in the first tier and the second tier are different, totally different. The second tier markets are those markets that you lower the conditions for going to the first market so that you can encourage companies to come and get listed in the market. I'm also sure that you are aware that we also have an OTC market.
That's right.
And another
OTC, which means over the counter, you mean? All right.
Popularly known as NASD.
That's right.
Then you also have the F.
That's FMDQ. All right.
So there are a variety of markets in Nigeria at the moment. So people do not have any excuse for not investing in the capital market. So, and then the issue of enlightenment comes in now, because you find out that the market is only meant for those in the cities. Those in the rural areas, most of them don't even know about the market. But they have the funds to invest in the market, because you find out that is where you see people putting their monies under their pillows and sleeping just for security purposes. But these monies can be put in the market.
That's right.
And then the monies will grow themselves and make you go to visit your bank smiling at the end of the day. So they have to be encouraged.
Well, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been speaking with Okpara Eze. He is the CEO of Crane Securities Limited. Let's leave it here. We'll take a break now. The show continues in a moment.